I'm Cindy Mosier. My story started really in January of 17. On that day, I was diagnosed with cirrhosis of the liver, for which they told me it could be managed with medication. And as the days and weeks went on, as the biopsy was taken, as all the results came in, it was said that I was at least halfway through the process of a dying liver. So it became evident I was going to need a new liver. And early on, I was told that I would not qualify soon enough for a liver. And so from doctor to doctor we went, and finally we settled to some specialists at the Cleveland Clinic. And a doctor said to me when I was very ill and beginning to lose the ability to function, that a transplant had to be looked into. So we went on to the Cleveland Clinic. We started the process there to be qualified for a liver, which is a grueling process. You have to go through many physicals, many tests to see that you're in good enough health to withstand a transplant procedure, but that you're in bad enough health to warrant it now. But in all of that, God had our days numbered, and He knew how it was going to work out, and I was so grateful. Was it easy to remember that as I went through the process? No. But it finally became evident that I was going to have one after an episode of encephalopathy, where it is like you have a stroke and you're not able to speak right. I was not able to walk. I was not able to move. They thought it was a stroke, but when they looked into it, it was from high levels of ammonia in my brain. After that point, I needed somebody to be with me 24 hours a day because I was going to make stupid decisions and do stupid things. And Heather immediately said, "Mom, I'm moving home." It became apparent that the transplant, that I went through the process at the clinic to have a transplant, I passed it. They said, yes, you can have a transplant, you need a transplant. At that point, they told me about a way to do it quicker. And that way is called a living donor, that somebody would donate, and it's a portion of their liver to you. And just a portion to you will save your life. They told me how important it would be that I go out and find that person myself, which is a daunting task. How do you walk up to somebody and say, give me part of one of your major organs? I just thought it was not going to happen. But of course I put regulations on that, and I limited my God's working when I did that, because I said to my children, you will not be the donor. I cannot live with the fact that something went wrong with you and that I would have to live knowing that I was the cause of that.
As I was sitting there listening, I'm thinking, she doesn't want any of us kids to be a donor, but that seems pretty silly. But I let her go through that week of the testing and the process.
Your best chance of having a donor match is your child. They have the same makeup as you do. My Heather, being adopted, probably in the medical field's eyes, was not the best choice for any of us, but God knew.
So I said to the two people, without Mom knowing, when we get home, I'm going to call and put myself on the list. And when you are a donor, you have to be able to be off work after you donate for 3 months. I had talked with my fiance and the kids, and we decided that we would make sure that I could make it work to not work. And so when we got home, I waited for a day that a friend of ours took Mom out for the day, and I called and said I'd like to be considered to be put on the list. There was really no uncertainty about it. Once God put it into my heart, there was no fear, there was no uncertainty. It just was, okay, if this is what you want me to do, then you're going to open the doors, and I'm going to be the match. I'm going to be qualified to do it.
And when that was all said and done, Heather was the perfect
Our livers matched up. In fact, for my frame, I had a little bit of a larger liver, so then I was able to give a larger portion than normal. When people would ask, are you nervous? Are you scared? No, I feel like God has prepared these doctors. They prepared me. He opened the doors, and I'm going to walk through them.
God had all these plans in mind, to have your own child say, I'm going to give you a part of myself. And having Heather being our adopted child, I told her this along the way, that I never doubted that she was the baby for us, that God had for us. When we found out it was going to be difficult for us to have children, and we asked to be on the adoption team, we also specified that God give us a boy. And the first child that was offered to us, when our name went to the top of the list, was a girl. And we prayed about it and separately and came together and said, this is not the child for us. And being a couple that desired children so much, that was a very difficult thing to do. But that's the way we knew God had led us. So we told them we would wait. 3 months later, we got another call. They said, we have another baby, and you're at the top of the list. And I said, what is it? And they said, it's a girl. And I put my hand over the phone and I said, Denny, we have another child offered to us. He said, what is it? I said, it's a girl. He said, it's ours. So that was amazing. God changed our hearts. And we didn't know he was doing that. We didn't know it till the moment it came out of our mouths. We didn't know it when we let the first child go. But see, God knew that this child was going to provide for us. I was walking through a room that Heather was in right after she said she was going to be a donor, and she said to me, Mom, you know what I thought? I thought, finally, I'm going to be flesh of your flesh, and you're going to be flesh of my flesh. And I said, Heather, that has never meant more to me than this moment. It never meant anything that you weren't my biological child, because you were the child that God had for us. That's all I needed to know. And that's what we told Heather from the time she was adopted. We never held that back from her, but that there are ways that God brings families together, and one of the ways was through adoption, and you were the answer to that prayer. And I never doubted that. And God, in his great mercy and grace towards us, allows us to know some of his plans along the way. I know undoubtedly some of his plans. I don't know it all, and I don't know what the future's going to bring through her in his plan, but I know he's got one, and I know he's been working. As the process goes on, we have the donor, we have the recipient getting iller. Days became very difficult before the surgery, but then the day came, and we proceeded to the Cleveland Clinic. I remember hearing a bed being pushed down the hallway, and I heard Heather say, "Stop, that's my mom." And the nurse stopped, or the transport person stopped, and we got to talk just before they took her into the surgery suite. When they took her liver, that same person, after it was split, brought it in and put it in me. It was like a symphony of work that went on in those. For Heather, it was 8 hours. For me, it was 12 hours. So the surgery took place. We were in intensive care. You were in for about 12 hours, weren't you, Heather?
Yes.
I was in for 2 days. I was told it'd be a year, possibly 2, before I really felt normal again. I can tell you at 3 months, I was beginning to feel normal again. And I'm at 6 months, and I've had to deal with some rejections, but I'm feeling, all except for strength, I'm feeling as better than I did before, because I'm living my life any room I want to live it in. And it's amazing. It's amazing. After the hospital stay, they also require you to stay in the area. You don't know how long, because you don't know how you're going to adjust to the anti-rejection drugs. During that time, I did a lot of trips back and forth for tests, and I did have some problems with the drugs, and they were able to adjust it. But at the end of the first month, they looked at me and they said, "You're ready to go home." And I said, "Today?" And they said, "Yes." And I was so grateful. About a month and a half out, I had my first rejection. I also had very high bilirubin, which it's kind of like a substance that gets between the layers of your skin, and you itch. And you itch. I mean, you itch everywhere. And doesn't matter how much you itch, you still itch. Nothing satisfies the itch. They have some medications, they don't touch you. They don't work. And the day that I said to the doctor, what am I going to do? I mean, I was frantic. I said, I don't know how much more of this I could take. I said, Lord, I don't know how I'm even going to get through the night. But if I can't have physical rest because of the itching and the side effects, I want to rest in you. Will you give me rest tonight in you? I turned on my phone. I found Moody Majesty Radio, and I put that phone under my pillow, and I laid down and I said, okay, Lord, I'm ready. And he began to minister to me from the time I was 11 years old and accepted him as my Savior. And he brought songs on Majesty Radio that reminded me of his goodness towards me at 11. And then my life progressed through the night when my family split up. I mean, really split up, and I had to be out on my own at an early age. He brought songs from that area to say, I was faithful then, I was faithful then. And then he brought me to this experience where at the beginning I really was facing, okay, this is it, I'm going to go home to be with the Lord. However, that's what you say in your spirit, and in your humanness, you're saying, but I want to see my grandchildren grow up. I want to continue to have Bible studies. I want to continue to minister to whomever you bring into my life, Lord. And you fight it, and you fight it. And during that night, I just laid that all on the altar. And I said, I saw Calvary in a different way. I saw the cross of suffering that my Savior went through, and I said, Lord, you did all of that because of your great love for me, and I say this one time is going to do me in? No. All of this suffering only identifies me more with the cross of Christ, and therefore I surrender. I surrender. The door opened. It was 5 a.m. It was the person to draw my blood, and she said, how was your night? And I was wet all night long, and she said, are you upset? And I said, oh no, these are tears of joy. I said, I've been with Jesus all night long. And she took my blood, and she left the room, and I know she thought I was crazy, but the Lord had ministered to me in a way I would have never known if not for cirrhosis of the liver, if not for that experience. God said, I am as faithful to you as when you were 11. I am as faithful to you when you were childless couple, and I brought you the child I had for you. I am as faithful to you as I have been through this surgery, orchestrating every move, orchestrating every answer to prayer. And I have heard the cries of your heart, and I have heard the prayers of your warriors that have prayed for you night and day, week after week, and month after month. I have heard, and I have answered. You don't get through a crisis like this in your life without having prayer warriors to hold you up. Listen, during that time, there are times you cannot pray. You go to prayer and you can't even form the thoughts to let the words come out of your head. And you have to depend on the fact that you know these people are warriors and they're holding you before the throne of grace. Sometimes all you can do is cry, and that cry generates the Lord listening closer. I believe that. And he heard the prayers, and he smelt the beautiful aroma that comes when the saints of God hold each other up in prayer. And I'm so grateful for that. And even though I'm better, I still get cards and calls and word of mouth that they're still praying, and I'm just so grateful. I was under the false impression that everybody that finally makes the national and the U.S. list, okay, everybody's going to go in there and get their replacement. But I had roommates that came there, and one was in evaluation for a liver. They both were, and both went home without being able to progress. So at that point, you begin to say, Lord, how good you've been to me. I've known it all along, but over and over again, you see situations where you have to say, Lord, if not for you. And I remember the one lady leaving, and my heart was broke for her. And I don't wonder why, because those are God's things to figure out, and we have to trust his providence in our lives. And I'm sure his will was being done in her life too. Sure of that. She was a Christian. And before she left, she came over and she prayed with me. And it was just amazing seeing that it isn't a sure thing just because you're very ill, that it's going to work out that way for you. And so when it does, you have to say, if not for you, Lord, this would not be so. And I was so grateful for that. I came home with a new attitude. I came home with a mission to make him known even more. In the hard times and in the good times, it's all about his faithfulness. He is faithful when we are not. He is faithful. Pastor Tim's last sermon before I went in the hospital talked about the goodness of God. He is good all the time. And many times I hung on to that, saying, this is good. Itching is good. And it was good because it led me closer to him. He has been faithful. I'm just so grateful.